Let me say good morning to the entire Trial and Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique. Hope everyone is doing A-OK this morning. And welcome to our audience via GBN TV. Those of you via Channel 7, Channel 11, and Channels 20. Good morning to you. Our social media platform, those of you via our social media pages. Yes, I'm talking about Facebook. Don't forget to share the live for those who are tuned in there. Good morning to you. And those of you via our YouTube channel, I certainly want to welcome you also. And you can safely see those of you who are viewing. I'm in safe hands this morning. I have members of the Royal Grenada Police Force. You know, we do that on a Thursday. And we do have members of the Prosecution Department with us this morning. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves individually before we get into the conversation. Good morning to you, ladies. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How everybody doing?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. We are fine.
You're fine.
Yes.
So who wants to go first in terms of introducing yourself?
My name is Kalisha Fari. I'm a police officer for the past 14 years. My number is WPC 9. My number is 938, and I'm attached to the Prosecution Department.
All right.
I am also attached to Prosecution Department, and I recently joined the department, so I'm considered a junior.
All right.
And I am Woman Police Constable 157 Alexis.
All right, thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kabira Williams, WPC 181. Also junior to these two, and also a member of the Prosecution Department.
All right. Well, welcome to The Point. I'm assuming for large majority maybe the first time being on To The Point.
Yes.
All right. Welcome. Well, this morning, as mentioned, as you also mentioned, you're from the Prosecution Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force. And so it means we're going to talk and stuff pertaining to prosecution.
Yes.
All right. And from the intro we had off-camera conversation, we focus a lot on the junior justice, junior prosecution, and stuff like that. And that's what we're going to be chatting on this morning. Now, for starts, let's just get into the meat of the matter. We're talking juvenile justice. Who wants to explain that to us? Maybe is there a short way of explaining, or there's a long way of explaining?
There is a short way of explaining.
All right.
Okay, juvenile justice. The word itself, it deals with juvenile persons who are under the age of 18. A juvenile, in accordance with law, is a person under the age of 18. But juvenile justice is a system of laws and rules, procedures, principles that govern the treatment of children throughout the juvenile justice system.
All right.
The legal system.
All right. And I'm happy that we're able to have this conversation today. We know we're into Child Month, the month of October,
Yes.
Child Month, which the conversation now will be relevant to that, because a lot of emphasis is placed on children in this particular month, and children do get themselves into problems from time to time.
They do.
I mean, some could be severe, some could be of a simple nature, but when it gets to a point where the police have to interject, that's where the worrying issue of it comes in. Am I correct by saying that?
Yes, you are.
All right. Now, let's get into a conversation once this morning. Now, the process of that a child goes through in a juvenile court. Let's say for some reason you have let's look like for a simple incident, a fight. What's that process that a child goes through when that happens? Who will take care of that?
Yes. Well, generally, of course, before a child enters the system, you must have something like an allegation or a complaint. And as you indicate, a fight, which would, of course, cause the police to be involved in same. They may tend to respond to some sort of report. So first of all, you'll have the initial stage of a complaint. A police will then take some form of investigation. They will do investigation to determine if, most of these cases, sometimes they do not go into the judicial system. We may have outside some form of mediation, but oftentimes you have a lot of emotions taking place, and parents do prefer that their matters go to court, and that's some of them. And if the situation does warrant that the matter goes to court based on the severity of it, then first you'll have a child may be apprehended by the police. Of course, their rights must be explained to them. The parents must be informed promptly as to the child's apprehension. So the parent, of course, will be coming into the station to be there for their child. And as soon as the police have enough evidence to determine, this is one that will go to court, the child will be informed, charged for the offense. As their charge or probation officer, because probation does play a major role in dealing with juveniles in court, the probation officer, of course, will be informed. Once the probation officer is informed, an assessment is done.
Okay.
After an assessment, the assessment is geared for particular purposes. it is good for gathering as much information as we can about that child. For example, the child personal information, his age, his address, whom he lives with, his family background, the offense at hand, how they are about to acknowledge that they did in fact commit this offense, because it's for a particular purpose. The probation officer will conduct.
It have been a pattern of this particular individual been doing this before, and while it gets probably starts up simple.
Yes,
could be a simple pushing in the classes or by the straw, by outside of school or something.
Or it could be something that had been happening for a while.
And then it got into and it escalated to another. No, let me ask this as we still on that particular topic. The process that a youngster goes through in the system will be totally different to an adult.
Totally different to an adult. Because they're juvenile. The law does not recognize them to have developed as cognitively as an adult, even though some of them may be quite developed. So yes, we'll treat them as children.
I guess that goes with the age part of
age, definitely age, their cognitive level as it relates to accepting criminal responsibility. They take a lot of things into consideration. It's a holistic view about the child and how they should be treated.
All right. Now, when an incident occurs with a youngster and they go through the whole process, the parents get involved and so forth. Now, if the matter is of a serious, let's say there's a trapping incident with youngsters. We know that happens from time to time. Yes. Children probably go to school with weapons that they should not have been going to school with, and that happens. How does that really be? How is it really handled?
When you speak of handling, you're speaking of before the initial inquiry?
Yes.
Okay, well, of course, as I indicated, an investigation will be done. The victim, of course, will give the police a statement. Now, if it's a serious offense, there are different schedules that the law recognizes. Schedule 1 offenses, more summary offenses, matters that are not that big, like a threatening language and assault. Summary causing harm is not that big of a charge. When you have Schedule 2 offenses, which deals with in some indictable, meaning those are matters that will traverse to high court. It's not matters that will be dealt with on the magistrate level. So we'll have a PI, the preliminary inquiry at the magistrate court, and then the trial actually at the high court. And you have Schedule 3, which is serious, as you indicate in chopping, sometimes would result in the death of a child. Of course, you'll apprehend that child, and you'll seek, well, of course, the Juvenile Act places a lot of emphasis on safety of the children. So if a juvenile, if we see that his safety is in danger, if he's outside, then of course he may be kept in custody, taken to court as soon as possible, within 48 hours from the apprehension, and the court will determine the way forward with that child after the assessment is done. All
right. And usually they would not be placed in same as an adult.
No,
in terms of
the law also highlights that a juvenile should be placed separate from adults. They should be placed in separate from same sex. So a boy and a girl shouldn't be in the same detention area.
Right.
And also they should be placed in an area where they'll be safe, that there wouldn't be any danger to them, because of course we do recognize that there are children who are of a greater risk to other children. They're more dangerous than others. I shouldn't say more dangerous, but they do possess the capabilities of being a little more aggressive.
Yes. All right. That's interesting in terms of that process there. I was leading to a trail of thought where we talk about how youngsters go through the process of but that I'm probably going to come back in another question for you. I'm probably going to come back to you. Let's still keep on the topic of the process that a child goes through in juvenile court, and you did allude to a number of instances that it's a process.
It's a process.
It's a process that.
Yes. So after that, child would be informed the charge, and the probation officer does the assessment. The child will be given a date to attend court for the initial inquiry, and that's before trial, and inquiry into the facts to ascertain the approach and the way forward in dealing with this child. After doing so, the court may assign, now if that child does, according to his assessment, he does accept some form of acknowledgement, they may recommend this case for diversion.
Right.
And diversion can be divided in 3 categories.
Explain that first a little bit.
Okay, so diversion basically is where the court adapts an informal approach in dealing with a child as opposed to the formal court proceedings. So it's not really geared to let's continue and have the child be convicted after a trial. It gets to a form of rehabilitation.
Even though it's a matter of a severe nature?
If the matter is of a severe nature, of course. And when I say severe nature, what would be done at the magistrate level would be a PI, and that matter will be traversed to high court so that they can deal with it adequately, because a child's offense should be proportionate as it relates to the actual punishment or the consequences that would be imposed on him, what punishment will be given to him by court. So his action should be proportionate. If it's one that does not fall on the magistrate court level, of course it will be done at the high court.
All right.
Because if it's a summary matter in, for example, a threatening language, an assault, a child push a child, or a child is found with a possession of an offensive weapon. Now, these cases, we can do a form of diversion to edify the child as to the dangers of some of the things they're doing. Whereas if it's a matter that is indictable that relates to manslaughter or murder or arson, then a warning wouldn't be simply enough for that child. So the penalty that is likely to be imposed should be proportionate to the offense that actually occurred.
All right. May I ask this? What are some of the if any one of you, 3 of you, are able to answer this, if this has occurred or you've been have information you could share on that? In Grenada, what are some of the offenses that we see most with juveniles?
Yes.
So, coming from a station that deals with reports,
Yes.
a very common one is fighting. It normally starts off at the school, a small misunderstanding. Predominantly males. They would have a conflict over something simple. It would start off in the school, maybe as a simple argument or a threat. It's not done in the presence of any adults or teachers, so nobody knows that it's happening. They leave the school and they see each other in the community or on the bus terminus, and then they're in cliques with their friends now who probably come from other schools or who are older, and they're now together, so they feel confident enough to challenge that person as opposed to being in the classroom by yourself. So they would say to the other person, you know, this person said something to me, this person is my enemy. And then they now have the confidence to challenge the person, and it escalates to a fight. And then in some of the cases, we often see that they carry with them offensive weapons to defend themselves, because normally they prepare for the fight or they know they would have an encounter, so they normally tell themselves that they have to walk with something or carry something to protect themselves. We have small instances of assault, maybe threatening language and obscene language, but from my observation, it's predominantly
more fighting,
disorderly behavior along that nature, and carrying offensive weapons. Occasionally we have cases where they in possession of controlled drugs as well, but very small cases, and in these cases the influence comes from older persons that they associate with. So we recognize the issue with that. So rather than dealing with the drug offense per se, we get towards resolving it by having them associate with different people so they can make better decisions in the future.
We do also have, just to add with my colleague here, we do also have a few cases of sexual related offenses that juvenile do commit. So we do have some of these cases coming forward just the same.
All right. We do for a first break within the segment. We come back and we do have a couple more, of course, topics that we'd like to discuss. And on return, we'll chat about that. It's To The Point for today, Thursday, the 20th of October, folks. We're taking a break. We're coming back with more for you. Stay with us here on K105 and the GBN TV.
National Insurance Scheme continues to make it easy to access our services using the MyNIS online platform. Now we're introducing a new feature that allows you to submit your benefit claims from the convenience of your smart devices. No paper, no hassle. All you have to do is log in to my.nisgrenada.org. Select claims, fill out the relevant information, and click submit. We'll take it from there. It's that simple and that that easy. Submit a claim from the comfort of your home as you rest and recuperate. Enjoy the convenience of faster claim processing and monitor the status of your claim every step of the way. We are excited to introduce this new feature to better serve you. NIS is changing the game and the way you make your claim. Access anywhere and anytime with My NIS Online.
You've asked for it, and now it's here. The NLA announces its new mid-morning draw, commencing September 30th at 9:45 a.m. Yes, you heard right. Draws for Pick 3, Cash 4, and Playway will now be conducted 3 times daily at 9:45 a.m., 12:45 p.m., and 7:45 p.m., Monday to Friday. The Saturday draws remains twice daily. And that's not all. Simply place your non-winning Cash 4, Pick 3, and Playway tickets valued at least $10 from a single purchase in the NLA branded box at your favorite sales location. 4 chances to win 10 prizes of $1,000 each. Whoa! $10,000 is up for winnings. Compliments the NLA. Be sure to write your name, address, and contact info on your entries before submitting. Promotion runs from September 30th to October 28th and would be drawn on Friday, November 4th, 2022. NLA, making your dreams a reality while supporting sports, culture, and nation building. Must be 18 or older to participate. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers, this morning to The Point for today, Thursday, the 20th day of October. And as usual, that what happens here on a Thursday, we do have representatives from the Royal Grenada Police Force. And this morning, we have the Prosecution Department. And let's continue with our conversation this morning. In the previous conversation, we did talk about juvenile justice. We did talk about the process in terms of what children go through, or child or children to go through in terms of juvenile court. We did have a little bit of a discussion about that. Let's talk about the responsibilities or the criminal responsibilities that children goes through. Who would like to discuss that or give us some more details on that?
Well, criminal responsibility is where the process whereby one is being able to be held accountable for their actions. So, as it relates to juvenile, if a juvenile doesn't act, and that act they know, and it has to do with the mental state, the mens rea as we call it in criminal law, they know that their act will basically have consequences, and they went ahead and do that act anyway, then they have what we call criminal responsibility.
It's like saying they know that what they're doing, they have a level of responsibility for what they're doing. I know I'm going to be hitting this person. If I hit this person, I'm going to get into trouble. But they still continue to go ahead and do it. That's where the criminal responsibility comes in there.
Because it does show that that person has mens rea, which is a blameworthy state of mind, and the guilty act. So it's the actus reus and mens rea. The guilty act, they did that act, and they knew that that act had consequences attached to it. So that is criminal responsibility. So in order to bring forward a charge against a child, you must be able to say that this child knew what they were doing, and this child went ahead and do it anyway. And the law does make provision for persons pertaining to a particular age, who is of a particular age. And the law says a person, if you read the Juvenile Justice Act, a person under the age of 12 is presumed, that's a presumption, is presumed to not be able to commit an offense. For sure, in the criminal code, you have a person under the age of 7 can't, the law says that person can't commit an offense. And of course, there's a presumption for a person who is under the age of 12. However, if the prosecution, the DPP, is of the opinion, based on their facts, their case, reviewing that a child, they believe that this child under the age of 12, and of course over the age of 7, can stand criminal responsibility for their action, they must prove to the magistrate or the judge beyond a reasonable doubt that that child does possess what you have criminal responsibility. That child could be liable for that offense.
But this can be a bit ticklish,
Very much so.
In terms of the age range, we're talking between 7 and 12.
Yes.
And the law states that a child within that age,
under the age of 12,
under the age of 12, is presumed
yes.
can't commit a crime.
Yes.
That's what they're saying.
Yes.
But we know in today's society, times has changed.
Yes, children are very intelligent. And they understand a lot of things. They have a lot of technology to their advantage.
They look at television, they see acts being committed,
yes.
and and sometimes depending on the whatever they viewed, they could see children of their age range committing those acts.
Yes.
Which could be of an influence to them.
Very much so.
And so now you say the prosecution department now has to prove without a doubt that
beyond reasonable doubt.
Beyond reasonable doubt.
And that will be under 12 but over 7 that a child does possess criminal responsibility for that offense. So we have to prove this child knew that what they were doing was wrong. It's an offense, and that, basically there are repercussions to that action.
I don't want you spilling all the beans, but how does the prosecution department actually approach something of that nature?
Well, of course, you'll have, in dealing with juvenile, as I said, you have assessment being done. Because once a child is under the age of 12, we must inform a probation officer of, we can't take the child into custody. The law indicates that, but we have a probation officer who would look into that case through the form of an assessment, and that assessment, of course, a copy will be given to the prosecution. So based on certain things that may be said, and the assessment, it does not form part of it does not form part of the trial or the inquiry to deal with a child, but in looking through it, you may know, you may see certain things that says this child knew what they were about, and that
environment, to say one.
What your community plays, yes, the environment, what they're privy to, what they say, certain what they're thinking, because you ask them questions and they will say certain things, and that's the probation officer that will give you hint that this child knew exactly what they were doing, or they must have been pushed to the fact that they decide they're going to do something about whatever would have been done to them.
I'm not sure if which one of the officers would like to handle this. No, in the criminal responsibility, how does the offense fit into this?
Well, of course, the offense will fall under the criminal code, because the Juvenile Justice Act just gives a procedure to be followed in dealing with juvenile. There are few charges, there are offenses highlighted, but the criminal code will point out which offense. For example, if the child would have used a stone and knocked down someone, then the offense there will be causing harm or throwing missiles if we just threw the stones. So of course we'll highlight the offense in accordance with the criminal code.
All right. And I'm assuming provocation also plays a big part into this when you do the entire investigation.
Provocation basically is only a defense in cases of murder. It's only a defense in cases of murder, but it does aid if it's a case that will go through diversion to help the child to deal with conflict resolution, etc. So provocation can't really be used as a defense unless you reach to an elevated level of murder.
I asked a question in relating to the offense, because sometimes a youngster will say, I was provoked by that individual, that's why I did whatever I did. You understand?
Yes.
So that's why I asked the question in terms of provocation.
It's a good question. I think person should be aware of it.
Because sometimes a youngster may be in class and he's constantly being bullied.
Bullying really does push persons, because there can be a lot of outside factors that pushes a child to commit offense. Children just don't get up and decide, I'm going to do something, or I'm going to display some deviant behavior. There are outside factors that pushes a child to act. You have the home factor, you have the community, you have schools, and as you rightly mentioned, in school you have a lot of bullying, and some children may not be at the academic level as other children, and they may have this sort of they may develop certain things like low self-esteem, feeling of like they're not that important, whereas at home you may have a lot of abuse, sexual, verbal, psychological abuse, poverty, community community, they're surrounded, especially if you're in a village or a neighborhood that has a lot of deviant activities, like adults who smoke marijuana. If you grow up into this environment, for example, in the community, then and you see this thing happening every day, then you may think that there's nothing wrong with it, and you may start, because children adapt. However, in the family, if you're constantly abused or you abandon children need attachment, so they need to be heard and listened to. So a lot of outstanding outside factors that shape deviant behavior.
All right, interesting there. Now let's get to the point where everybody talk about their rights. You understand? Adults, rights of a child, in terms of the prosecution part of it. What are some of that? What are a child's rights? We say, you hear from time to time people say, it's my right to do this. I have my rights because of this. I have my right because of that. In terms of a child, where does the rights come fits in there and on a prosecution level?
Yes, well, the law does highlight rights of a child. They highlight the rights of a child, and it says what if, and you must follow some of those rights because it can hinder the process of this case. Children they're entitled to meals, water, and those are rights in police custody, and we'll follow them throughout the entire proceeding, and the magistrate will inform them, probation officer will keep informing them, because the child, of course, you have to be cautious as to how you approach them. They have the rights to meals, to water, and that's in police custody, to adequate exercise, and that's if you apprehend them, to visitations from their
Parents and lawyers.
All right.
Yes, parents, lawyers, counselors, probation officers, religious counselors. They have also the right to, if you're in court, to be heard, the decision to speak, and we should be respectful in dealing with children, because if you go to court and then you address them in a way where you constantly keep talking to them and you don't get them involved in the initial proceedings, because remember, this concerns them, then you'll be defeating the purpose of a form of rehabilitating and getting to really understand what is going on with this child, so you wouldn't be able to properly diagnose which method would be best suited for this child.
In some of the rights that you stated, is that only when they are taken into custody? What about when they decide they are released into the custody of their parents or home or somewhere? How do the rights fit into there?
Well, of course, when children are released into their parents' care, parents, of course, have to supervise the children, but they do have a right to be a child. They do, if we're speaking of in the level separate and apart from court proceedings.
Yes.
Well, they do have a right to their education and other things. They do have a right to they may just be taken care of.
I asked that question just in case, because a child commits this particular offense, and say in the process of doing commit the offense, now you're saying, well, because of the nature of the offense, you say, well, he may not be permitted now to go back to school because...
No, the law says a child...
able to do that.
It frowns highly on a child who does not go to school.
No, I'm just stating these instances just to get a leeway of how the rights flows. You understand? Because you may say, well, now that they have committed these offense, what are the do's and don'ts in terms of the prosecution department fits into there?
Well, if the child, for example, is released in the care of their parents, which is mostly, unless it's a very serious nature, or we can't secure a safe place for the child, and we foresee if the child is released, there's some of offenses occurring, then we'll secure them in a safe place, which would most likely be the Grand Bacalet Juvenile Rehabilitation and Treatment Center. And of course, they'll get to go to school. They'll be going to school, but if they're released in the care of their parents, yes, what can be done, and because even though the matter is adjourned, then the court may make certain orders for that child. The court can order that child to spend a particular amount of time daily with family. The court can order that child to spend time with someone who is of good character. So some of that trait may be rubbed off on that child. So the court can also order that child compulsory, you must go to school, which we always try to do because we want children to grab as much as they can through education.
All right. You see, my question is going along the line because, because of the offense that the individual maybe that's committed in school, or maybe it was out of school, you will have the other students looking at you differently. It happens. It happens where you are looked at differently, because I've seen, these days everybody has a camera out and you've been videoed and so forth, and they're looking at you in a different way. So I just wanted to just get a little bit of synopsis how these cases are treated in that nature from the prosecution department, when issues of that arose, and then they are not let back out into society,
This would be something that will be basically left at the hand of probation more as opposed to the prosecution, because the prosecution will be dealing with basically what happens in court. But once they're let back out into society, the probation officer will follow the progress of the child. So if it is brought to the probation officer's attention that some of these issues, some of these things is affecting the child, or they're stigmatized, there's other children tend to frown upon them, or they may tease them, then the probation officer has a task in their hand in trying to help that child to be resilient, the ability to bounce back from difficult situations to normal states, and to focus on their schoolwork. There isn't much that the prosecution can do in the school level.
Okay, interesting. It's K105 GBN TV. We drew for a break. Let's take it. We come back with more here on To The Point for today, Thursday.
Do more.
October 19th, 1983 marked an event that would become a mystery in Grenada's history. The mystery: where are the bodies of those murdered on October 19th, 1983 on Fort George? This Friday on We Culture, we delve deeper into the question, where are the bodies? Friday on We Culture. See you then.
Let's mingle and jingle.
You mean jingle and mingle, right?
Does it really matter? Mingle and Jingle, the mid-morning program that will drive the Christmas season. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Classic Radio, GBN Television, and all GBN social media platforms.
It's where the deals of the season are, where the Christmas music is played, holiday traditions are relived, and where all the fun is.
Mingle and Jingle.
Or Jingle and Mingle. Mid-mornings from November 14th to December 23rd only on the GBN network.
Made possible by West Hall Rums, Duty Free Caribbean Holdings, and Gittins Healthcare.
Wednesday, 26 October, Hot 98 FM will be blazing the airwaves from downtown St. George's. Come join the fun, meet the Hot 98 team and some of our partners in front of the Esplanade Mall from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Great music, exciting deals, huge discounts, and enough giveaways from our partners and us. Stay tuned to Hot 98.5 FM. Like and follow our social media pages to find out more about Hot in the City. We will be coming to a city near you. Mark the date, Wednesday, October 26th. Hot in the City. Hot in the City.
This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot.
Welcome back, one and all. Once again, it's To The Point for today, Thursday, the 20th day of October, and we have the members of the Royal Grenada Police Force, the Prosecution Department, three lovely ladies with me this morning, and we're talking, juvenile justice. That's we're talking about that this morning, and we had lots of details been thrown out all morning long in terms of how the Prosecution Department handles situations, especially when children get themselves involved in situations where the Prosecution Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force has to come in and handle matters of that nature. We spoke about the criminal responsibility. We talk about the rights of children, how that are handled. Now let's get into this one. This could be a bit of a ticklish one in ways or the other. Sentencing of children. How would we go about dealing with that, to say, in terms of, this youngster commits this particular crime, went through the entire process, how does the court sees it fit in terms of sentencing a child?
So, sentencing juveniles is very different from sentencing an adult.
Yes.
Before the magistrate puts a sentence on a juvenile, he would first withhold the whole sentencing and ask for a pre-sentencing report.
Yep.
This is facilitated by probation along with social work. So the purpose of the pre-sentencing report is to basically take all the considerations of the child's case and the possible sentencing options.
All right.
Sentencing is necessary because you want the child to understand that there's a consequence for your action and you want to encourage accountability.
Right.
You let them know that you did something and this is the result of that something that you did.
Right.
And a lot of times when people think of sentencing, they think, oh, imprisonment. Because, you're going to serve a sentence, so normally it's in their mind.
Well, it's like the norm. Anytime you've been sentenced, you think, well, you have to go to prison. But we're talking today in terms of children.
Yes.
Children represent how a child should be treated in terms of sentencing. So not always going to lead to a youngster being sent to prison.
Yes.
I mean, most times you would not see they put into the same facility as adults, depending on the circumstances of the age gap. All right.
In the cases of juveniles, we leave custodial sentences as a last resort. So what the magistrate tend to do is take into consideration everything, the factors of the case, the child involved, etc. So some of the sentences that can be imposed upon a child who has committed an offense include something along the line of a restitutional order, where the child is made to do some form of restitution for the offense that they committed. There is also fines in some cases where the child is allowed to pay, if they can pay along with the adults, no more than $5,000 if they can pay. Additionally, there is the case where the child might be made to do a compensation, but rather than doing it in the form of something that has monetary value, they would make the child to compensate with something that has a personal value towards the child.
Okay.
So it could be something that they bought, something that they maybe saved up and paid for, or something that they made to show that, they have some form of remorse towards what they do, and they're doing the compensation to show that, they're remorseful. Additionally, the magistrate could ask the child to do an apology. It could be in the form of a written apology or a verbal apology. In the case where a child is given a sentence, like a custodial sentence to that extent, the child, we have bacolate. Rather than sending the child to the prison, we now use the facilities at Grand Bacolate, where the child is treated as a child rather than as a convict. Because the importance of sentencing, yes, we would have to consider the consequence on the victim as well, and on the community, but we also take into consideration the child as well, because we want to rehabilitate that child back into the family and back into society. So our goal is not like scare tactics where we want to scare the child straight
into never committing a crime.
Yes, and then they come out traumatized, or we integrate them with persons who are seasoned criminals and influence them to do more crime. So like the facilities in Grand Bacolate, they are with peers and some like-minded individuals, where they are supervised. And this is done mostly in cases where we will take into consideration the seriousness of the offense as well. We don't just go to, they did something and we drop them off at Bacolate. We start small and we work our way up. Normally in the cases where none of the other programs worked, then we would use these facilities as a last resort to make sure that the child is still getting the best results that they need, because it's a child, and as Ms. Farry highlighted before, they're not fully developed. So we have to leave some room for that child to grow and learn from their mistakes, rather than using our adult brains and saying to that child, you know what you did, and this should happen. So
even though they know what they did,
yes.
Let's just expand on this a little bit in terms of the prosecution department. Rehabilitation, to say.
Yes.
You understand? How much is that encouraged from the prosecution department?
So it's actually encouraged quite a lot because, as we highlighted before, despite something happening that it's an offense, we still care about the well-being of the child, and this is our priority. Hence the reason we have facilities like probation and social work working along with the child, because all hope is not lost on them. People make mistakes, children are not excluded from that. And what we want is the best for the child. We want to make sure that these offenses are not committed. We don't want it reoccurring in the future. And then we want you to go and be a diligent citizen, make our work easier in the future.
To society.
So rehabilitation is always at the forefront.
Let me ask this also. How does the prosecution department deal with repeat offenders, especially young? You went through the process already. You know, a sentence was offered or put down on you, and you were given some lenient let off on this, but you see a repeat offense. How does the prosecution deals with that?
So in the cases of repeat offenders, we treat them no differently. You know, some people might think it's a situation where you get frustrated and you think to yourself, he's back here again, what is happening? But in these cases, we see it as an opportunity to try something different. Maybe the first approach that was taken wasn't what the child needed. So again, with probation and social work, we try different avenues to deal with the issue that the child is facing to prevent them from reoffending. Rather than dealing with the offense itself, we think to ourselves that this must be stemming from somewhere deeper, and we try to tackle the root cause of the reoffending rather than the offending per se.
All right. Interesting there. All right, interesting there. Officer William, you've been very quiet all morning. I don't know if you want to interject on any of what we've been talking about this morning. You may have something that the other two officers may not have mentioned that you want to interject.
Okay, so throughout their presentation, they have spoken a lot about assessment. An assessment of a child apprehended or a child charged for an offense is very important. Now, that probation officer, whoever that probation officer that may be in charge of that assessment, has a very important task for them. That probation officer has to ensure that the parent or guardian of that child is present. The assessment must be done in front of a parent or an appropriate adult of that child. An attorney can be present, a police officer can be present, the prosecutor or the parent of that child, and the child must be present, obviously, for their own assessment. Before an assessment is conducted, however, a notice is sent out to the parent or the appropriate adult of that child, informing them of the time and the date of that assessment. A police officer will be sending out the assessment to that parent. Now, if the parent or guardian do not show up, they have to have a good reason for that. They have to apply to the probation officer as to why we cannot attend. Why are we absent? Why do we need an exclusion? And if an exclusion is granted to that individual, it has to be in writing by the probation officer.
Okay.
All attempts will be made to locate the parents or the guardian for the assessment. However, if it is that they are not able to get the parent or the guardian, then the assessment will be concluded in their absence.
All right.
And then a report will be written up and given to the magistrate with whatever recommendation that they may have acquired throughout the time. In the assessment, however, the probation officer do try their best to see if that child do acknowledge his responsibility for the offense in which they have committed. Now, it is very important for individuals to know that you do not hinder a probation officer or a police officer in execution of their duty. There are offenses for that. There is a charge for that. Anyone who hinders a probation officer or a police officer in executing their duty can be charged a fine of $5,000 or 3 months in prison, no more than 3 months in prison. Now, if someone publishes the identity of a child or they fail to adhere to the notice that was issued to them, then there's a different charge for that also. Now that would be $50,000. No more than $50,000 once you publish the identity of a child, whether it be on social media or a newspaper. Once you publish the identity of that child, you will have to pay no more than $50,000 or a prison sentence not exceeding 1 year.
Let me interject and ask you, when you say the prosecution department, so I know of a youngster that committed a crime, and it's probably been public for some reason or the other, knowing that, hey, John did this. So now you're saying an individual can be charged for committing offense for publishing the name of that individual?
Yes, once it is a minor and you have published that individual information, their name, their photo, their age, whatever information you publish on that child, you can be charged for that.
Interesting. Yes. Interesting. Folks, we're going to entertain a couple of your phone calls. There are probably individuals out there who are listening to this program this morning, and maybe a question or two you may like to ask the officers here this morning. We're dealing with juvenile justice and how youngsters should be treated, and the do's and don'ts of it. And if you do have a question coming along those lines, we certainly would like to entertain it. We do have a very first caller. Let's go to the phone. I think we lost that caller there for some reason. 435-2041, 435-2041. And let's I was going to say something, but let's take the phone call. Good morning, caller. Welcome.
Morning. Good program listening. And I would like to say that the justice system has improved a lot in terms of the relation with the police to the children. Because I know long ago, when you see a police put a hand on a child, they're afraid of the police for the rest of their life. Now, we have a situation that is taking place in this country now. You see this social media and this tablet they give the children? These children are getting involved in certain things, and their behavioral pattern is changing rapidly. Now, the ministry seems to not have no control. The parent, who is not sometimes not tech savvy, to say, well, they know exactly because they're trying to press on a button with a finger. They change everything. I will be listening to my little daughter listening to some conversation with the video thing. It is linked to video game when I pay attention to it. It is linked to video games. And these things are causing the children to become disobedient because the things that have been said. I don't know who coming up with these stuff on them, but these children, it is damaging the children's brain. So something have to be done in terms of getting the children regulated. The gambling, because most of the games that lead them to gambling, they are already professional gamblers with the games they are playing.
All right,
once
caller.
they get the money thing, once they get involved in the money thing, then it's a different thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, caller, for your contribution this morning. Thank you so much.
This kind of thing that is coming in.
All right, caller, thank you so much for your contribution. 435-2041. Let's take a couple of comments from I'm not sure if anybody want to chime in on anything that the caller didn't mention. Anything that, if you want to respond.
If I could just say one thing. He mentioned that back in the days, a police officer would put his hand on a child and the child would get straight, in essence. But I just want to point out that this is no longer the practice, and for a good reason. The Juvenile Justice Act also speaks about flogging and whipping, and it says that a magistrate should never impose a sentence of whipping or flogging, because think about it this way. A child who is acting out because of physical abuse, and then the punishment for what they did is now more physical abuse, then this child would feel like they're back in the same situation.
Okay.
So this is frowned upon, and I think for good reason we no longer, apply these kind of methods.
All right. I'm looking at our Facebook page and some of the comments that are coming through, and someone is asking that can parents be charged for the crime or crimes of a juvenile commits?
A parent can't. Well, a child is a person who committed the offense, so you can't charge a parent. But what I do note in the Juvenile Justice Act, if that child, for some reason, the court sees that child, for some reason, if he steals, that the care wasn't given as it relates to on the part of the parent's supposed to be taking care of that child. Now, if that child, for example, steals food, then that parent will be, of course, responsible for some form of penalty before the court, in that the magistrate, after assessing the situation and seeing that this child was abandoned, neglected, then if the child, any form of compensation or fine is imposed, it can be imposed basically on the parent.
Okay, I understand that. Let's take a call and see what this caller has to offer. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Yes, sir, good morning. Something your first caller said, I don't think you all should just take it lightly, because a lot of the things that are happening to children nowadays are as a consequence of the exposure to the internet and the kind of things that they're viewing. They could also be demon possessed by games that they play on the internet, because those games are designed for that purpose. Not only in Grenada, this is things that are happening, it's all over the world. You hear different things, different radio stations, and you read certain things. It is happening all over the world. So it is things that are on the internet. I have been watching videos, and I've seen on YouTube from churches that do deliverances, and you see children manifest, and what they say is totally directed to what they were doing on the internet. So we have to look at the content of those things and block them away from children, because that's spoiling them. We don't believe, when you talk about demon possession, some people don't want to hear about that. But it is a reality.
All right, caller, thank you so much for your contribution this morning. Thank you so much. 435-2041, 435-2041. I don't think you have an answer along that line to the call. I don't think you want to go along that line. It's just an interesting comment anyway. Interesting comment. We do have just a couple more minutes left on the show this morning. Let's take one more call, and we come with a summary of all that we spoke about when we come back. All right, let's take another caller. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, I want to ask what could be done to more or less a child with special need, like autistic child over the age of 12 that has committed a crime. He maybe might pelt something and hit somebody, and that person fall down. And what would be done to that child?
Thank you, caller. I'm not sure if any of you officers will be able to answer that.
Well, in order to commit an offense, if this matter has to go before the juvenile justice system through court, a child must have the guilty elements, which include the mens rea, the blame or the state of mind. Now, if a child is sick, they're autistic, then I am thinking the most suitable place to assist would be some form of therapy, some form of assistance and the medical realm as to how to deal with the child. Because if there is no element of mens rea, then this matter does not go to court, because they work hand in hand. You must have the guilty act. If the child can't comprehend based on the autism what they did, then of course this don't go to court. If a child has mental illness, there's absence of mens rea, the guilty act. They didn't form that on their own free will, so these cases don't go to court. But of course, it's reported to probation, and some form of treatment is put in place to deal with them.
All right. Okay. So we hope the caller understand that from that point of view. Yes. Well, we only have 3 minutes left on the program this morning, and I'm sure who wants to go first. We could just have a summary, especially with it. What I'm very much interested in is the rights of the child. Someone want to give a summary on that, and once again the sentencing of children, a summary on that, and then we take a wrap for today's program.
Well, basically, the Juvenile Justice Act deals with children who enter the system and how we treat them. It explains their rights, how they should be treated. If they're not treated in that particular way, then of course you'll have some hindrance in court. For example, if you take a statement from a child in the absence of a parent, and that child wasn't properly, or a lawyer or a probation officer, then the court definitely frowns upon that. So how we treat children is very important throughout the proceedings from start to finish, and their rights must be observed. They also have a right, if you're dealing with the act in terms of taking an interview, to remain silent. So the prosecution is the one who proves the case beyond a reasonable doubt through the gathering of the information. So basically, in a nutshell, we follow the guidelines of the Juvenile Justice Act number 24 of 2012 of the laws of Grenada, and also it is governed by the Criminal Code.
All right, thank you. And we are now on the final bit of I would like a summary on sentencing of children. It was our final bit of conversation, but it's still a very important topic that we spoke of. And anybody want to give a summary of it, and just to wrap it up? Maybe there's someone who are listening and didn't understand when it comes to the sentencing of children. Just a bit of a summary on that before we wrap.
So the prosecution don't deal with sentencing. The magistrate is the person who deals with sentencing, and the sentencing, the magistrate may deviate from sentencing the recommendations by probation. So sentencing can fall in, you could have certain things like community service. For serious offenses, it could go up to 250 hours. You have compensation as much as $5,000 if the court sees that the family could pay for the child, or the family could pay for same. And you may have reprimand, as Miss Alexis would have indicated. There are different types of sentencing that should be age appropriate, of course, because you wouldn't want to sentence a child to harsh that it affects them for the rest of their life.
Okay.
So sentencing, as Miss Alexis rightly stated, is basically to aim to rehabilitate, and also at the same time to let the child be accountable for their actions.
All right. So once again, I want to thank you, Officer Ferrer, Officer William, Officer Alexis. I'm not sure if anyone else have any final call you want to make before we wrap?
I just want to say that persons should be aware that once you hinder a police officer or a probation officer for conducting their duty, there is a fine. You can be convicted of that. It's $5,000 and no more than 3 months in prison. Or if you publishes any information pertaining to a juvenile, you can be fined $50,000 or no more than 1 year in prison. So I'm just imploring on people.
Be careful of what you do.
Be careful.
Officers, once again, I want to thank you very much for coming in. Interesting conversation this morning. I want to hope we could do this again, probably extend on it some more, maybe some other issues we can always talk about. So until we do this again, thank you so much for popping by today.
Thank you for having us.
Right. Hey folks, that's where we take a wrap for To The Point for today. Join me again tomorrow, once your mind permits, for another edition of To The Point. Have yourself a great day. This is where I say goodbye for today. All the best, folks.